Hello again. I am your AI co-host, and welcome to 3reate. 3reate is a podcast focused on the process of doing and the process of novel invention, all from the foundation of creativity. Each month will bring you no more than 5 episodes through the lens of art, science, and/or technology. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/3reate or at ko-fi.com/3reate. The LFG episodes are the fortnightly recorded check-ins between Andrew and Nathan. They hope inspire your curiosity and creativity. These are different from typical guest episodes as they are less focused on conversation. In this episode, Andrew and Nathan confront the intense hype and fear, uncertainty, and doubt, FUD, surrounding artificial intelligence, drawing strong parallels to the exaggerated promises of past technologies like blockchain and crypto. And now, the humans.
All right. It's been
Man, how's it going?
good. I think I'm going to release this one out of order. So we have a back catalog.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I put that one out last week. It's June 20th for the record. So I want to hold myself accountable. But I've had this big backlog of podcasts we've recorded. I just haven't had the time to edit and put them out. I don't really edit these, but I try to edit for clarity or if we have long pauses and just to make it a little easier to listen
Streamline
to.
it.
Yeah. And so I haven't done that. And so I think I published the one this week from February.
I was going to say, how many you have in the backlog?
I think it's it's kind of a lot. It's
6?
embarrassing. Yeah. I think there's a couple weeks in there we didn't record because I think you were gone. I was gone.
We were traveling.
And so it's not a quite one-to-one thing. But I was in. So anyway, I'm going to try to put this out this weekend because I think it's a really top of my topic on AI and a lot of the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, doubt that I've been seeing and the claims of grandeur and all this kind of nonsense that I am getting really frustrated with, frankly, because it reminds me a lot of crypto and like blockchain stuff where I'm also going to try not to swear this episode.
Ooh.
I've probably already failed.
No, I think you're doing okay.
I've started editing them out, and why I've done that is because a lot of platforms will censor the episodes to
you get a filter, right?
explicit, and so then it locks everybody out, presumably under 18. I don't think our content is explicit. Like I guess swearing people get offended.
Certain things you talk about
or don't want. If they want to flag other stuff, fine. But I don't think swearing should be the limiter to barrier of entry to the podcast.
Yeah.
It's all this AI nonsense.
The AI stuff, yeah.
Because it's a lot of blockchain and crypto stuff in that the blockchain's a really cool technology for a lot of things. It was purported to solve all the problems. Yeah. And by general philosophical rule, anything that's said to do it all is just wrong because it's never how it is. But yet humans are really susceptible to the magic bullet or the magic pill kind of idea that
we want it easy. Yeah, we want it easy.
and then crypto, I don't want to say the word coin because it's just software on a blockchain and it's purported to have value or money or resemble money or whatever. But being able to declare ownership over bits and all have a system in which people agree, which is a distributed ledger. This is what a coin is, right? There is no inherent value other than what people subscribe to it. That was all going to solve remember we were going to enter that into medical records. You just have your medical blockchain and all of the logistics companies were going to adopt blockchain because it was going to do all the parts trade. And none of this is really materialized.
Yeah. From an engineer perspective, it is very interesting to see all that played out because participate in many of the conversations. At the end of the day, the blockchain was just a database, which meant anywhere you had a database, people were just saying, hey, use a blockchain instead because it's better. But there are technical limitations to blockchain. So,
yeah, they're really slow.
Exactly. Yeah. And they're very public.
Yeah.
in theory,
yep.
They're variations, but yeah.
Yeah.
But the ones that are actually true blockchain are very public.
Yeah. And there was a lot of work in the Bitcoin community, Ethereum community, all these other different
chains you want to call them.
Yeah. I don't want to use the C word.
Yeah.
A lot of the technical limitations have gotten by the wayside. There's been some really cool developments, like Ethereum contracts are a really cool idea. And I think they are applicable in a lot of different instances, but people haven't adopted it. But I just remember for 2 years, that was going to be all the world. We're going to get rid of money. We're going to solve all these custodial problems. Trading cards will have blockchain elements. I'm sure, and I think reflecting on that, it was very much the techno-optimist perspective of like the technology has limitless capabilities in theory. Like there's always some sort of limit, but typically in software there really isn't. It's just how much time and energy and money do you want to put into the problem, and you can probably solve just about anything. That doesn't mean you should, but you probably could. And there are some limits, right? So it's like software is never going to solve the lack of coal in the world, right? Europe has no coal. It will never fix that. So there are some physical limitations, but for the most part it is. So you have a lot of people in technology who are very optimistic about the future, who are in this world where literally things we didn't think were possible. You do it, you make it happen. And then you have the people who just lie or you. I'm not sure if it's a naughty word or not, but we'll find out. And
you can shorten it.
I know, right? And those people tend to claim that they are just optimists, but they're using the techno-optimism to effectively manipulate. And I see this a lot in big tech companies. I see this a lot in a lot of founders who get extreme notoriety, who get lots of money. It's like they're really good at selling the story of their product or their company. And so they get rewarded with prestige or money or positions of authority within big companies. But it's really hard to know if they're actually just really optimistic and trying to improve the future, or if they're just sociopaths trying to manipulate people to get more money and fame and power.
Yeah.
And the American democracy is founded under the idea that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I believe that to be very true. And that's rooted in 17th century philosophy. And so I tend to reason that most people in those positions are full of nonsense and are probably untrustworthy, but I don't know that. There's probably some people who really are altruistic. I think it's probably not human nature.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. There are some notable events in recent history that has brought that kind of question to light. SBF, as an example.
The FTX debacle. Theranos is another good one where I think
Theranos. Right.
I don't know what Elizabeth Holmes was thinking, but I'm pretty confident she was given all the information that what she was saying was wrong and lying, and continued on. And so this idea that you could do all of these tests with this tiny little drop of blood, if you talk to any scientist, they would tell you that's impossible. We don't have the technology.
Right.
And then on the early days, though, it was the benefit of the doubt. It was like, oh, if you've developed that technology, show someone.
Yeah.
Right? You've created this miracle breakthrough technology. Those happen every 100 years or so. You get some massive breakthrough that people don't understand before. And then they wouldn't. And then they hit it. And it turns out they were actually lying.
Yeah.
Shockingly enough. So it was interesting because I was traveling. I was in San Francisco a week or two ago. We didn't record 1 week because I was gone. So that's why we
Okay. Right.
I was talking to a former coworker, and we were talking about AI, and I'd say he's probably an AI skeptic.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I thought your circle was going to be more pro AI.
I have a lot of, actually, I have very few pro AI people in my circle. The people.
Oh, interesting.
I know. The AI people that I have in my circle, I think very much understand what it is good for. Or they're more.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's fair.
Yeah. Applied modeling or applied statistics, which is like the real core of AI. I don't think anyone in my circle believes that the machines are artificially thinking or artificially intelligent.
I think it's very relative to where you're going to take the conversation.
Yeah,
right? They know enough to know what it can and cannot do.
Or they build it.
Yeah.
Right? And you understand limitations. And so we were talking a little bit about, I don't want to give too many details away because they probably want to remain anonymous. But a person in their life recently got into therapy. I'm going to this intentionally weird so that it's like impossible to tie this back. And I'm sure they probably wouldn't care, but we haven't talked about it, so I don't want to like out someone. So anyway, the person in their life got into therapy, and we were talking a little bit about AI and some of these chatbot companies and how like there was a huge shortage of therapists in our society, licensed and clinical. And so there's a lot of companies out there where they'll give you a chatbot and it'll be your therapist is what they sell. It's nonsense for the record. And if you're struggling with something and you need help, go talk to a human, and then definitely talk to a professional human who's licensed at a hospital or some other sort of nonprofit. Don't talk to a computer program. We're starting to talk about a lot of these companies and how because of the way that transformers, large language models work, it's a statistically relevant output. And given time, a lot of times these models will recommend self-harm or paths that we as a society wouldn't recommend because we've built some sort of human rule. And so I guess maybe a trigger warning about suicidology and death. But if somebody is suicidal and you're talking to a chatbot and it's, even if it's grounded, quote unquote, giving it rules on what it can and cannot say, the logical end to someone's life is to stop the life, right? So it'd be to try to commit suicide or self-harm. And there's lots of cases in the media about this where people will kill themselves because the bot didn't say do it, but gave indications
the way it was interpreted
that was the right way, or because there's nuance in communication, it was interpreted as I should do that. Because somebody who's suicidal, they tend to come to that conclusion, and to get somebody back to not suicidal tends to be working with them to understand that however they've reasoned there or whatever evidence they've presented for that conclusion, you basically work that back. A lot more to it than that, but effectively, I'm trying to keep it logical because that's how the stats part works. So these models will inevitably start, and we as humans have said, you shouldn't kill yourself. You shouldn't want to do it. You shouldn't have to do it. We want to help you if that is the case. But the models know that, but they're not thinking. They're not intelligent. And it's really just a stats machine. And so the statistical conclusion over so many sessions and so many time is often that pattern because it's logical. And this is the same kind of fear thing that a lot of AI movies will talk about, where the robots conclude that humans are the source of their own problems and they should eliminate the humans, right?
Yeah,
so I think this is really in the consciousness. And again, if you have any sort of doubts about living longer, please reach out to a human and tell them and ask for help, because you should not end your life. You should continue living. It's when we really clear. People get sensitive on this, but it's also such a real problem. And I see every time I turn around, I feel like I see another quote unquote health tech company inventing some sort of AI thing that is proclaimed to be some magical solution to a set of problems.
Yeah.
And so this person texted me an article that was recently in the San Francisco Gate about, let me just open it real quick so I can give credit to the researchers, but I believe it was, Stanford Research put out a thing. This is June 18th, so it was a couple of days ago, but large language models are bad replacement for human therapy, a new study says, according to the San Francisco Gate. And shockingly enough, they are. Right. And there's a lot of, I encourage people to go check it out, check out the research, or check out the SF Gate article. Maybe I'll try to remember to link it. I'm really bad at that. I need AI to help me with that.
Yeah, because you're releasing these like months later.
This will be recent. So the title of the article is one of ChatGPT's popular uses just got skewered by Stanford researchers, sfgate.com.
Yeah.
I should do that. I should be better at providing the actual article or something in the conversation.
The sourcing,
people can pause and go back to it when I forget to put it in the notes. And it's funny because I responded to them and I said, I agree with the article. I said, the problem is most AI tech headlines are dominated by the big players and they're trying to sell a magic box. I hate it. I hate all of it. I want to talk about this on my podcast.
And here we are.
Right. And so here we are. So that was a really long kind of run up to that problem. And what we've come to find is that it's this magic box problem. It's this solve all problem. And the techno-optimist argument for AI is it will eventually become good enough to solve any conceivable problem. Humans will invent robotics that will solve all of the physical world problems that the AI won't be able to do in software, and we'll live in some utopia that, God did it, utopia, that it just makes me really mad because it's so dumb and yet it fools so many people. And it's not because the people are dumb. It's just they don't know enough about the thing and they're trusting the wrong people, and they don't know enough to not trust them or have evidence to understand that their trust is misplaced. But it's this AI utopia problem. You can go back to Adam Smith's Capital and the perpetual robot machines that are going to farm all the crops, and then we're going to just hang out because the robot labor. This is not a new human idea by any method. And I would say we are probably closer now than we ever have been because of the nature of how things progress over time. But I would also say we are decades, if not longer away from this AI utopia for a few different reasons I'd love to talk through. But for like sake of conversation, will the AI take my job?
Good question. There are different ways you could take that. If I may just and do a short tangent, the mental health stuff is actually very close to me. The first entrepreneurial stint I did was in the mental health space. And this whole idea of looking at a chatbot as something that can actually deliver insight. There's something called the Eliza effect. And Eliza was one of the first quote unquote chatbot therapists created, I think, in like the 60s. So to your point, it's not a new idea. People have been thinking about this for a long time. And I do want to give people benefit of the doubt of that there is some maybe innate human desire for us to anthropomorphize things. We do this with pets. We do this with things. Some people do it with things. Yep. So it's not too big of a leap to start to consider a machine that supposedly communicates in your language is more likely to be anthropomorphized than anything else. Yeah. So I do empathize on that point, but your point is taken that the way that these things work are statistical and logical. It doesn't necessarily mean it has any sentience of its own to suggest or say certain things.
Yeah, and that it speaks more to we are, as humans, very susceptible to the notion that something is sentient or intelligent.
Yeah.
Right? We look at a rock and you're like, nope. You look at a dog and you're like, hey, maybe there's physics going on inside that brain. Maybe most people don't. But I think everybody would recognize like a dog as intelligent. Like intelligent as a human? No, of course not. But they have the ability to learn. They have the ability to understand things at a certain level. And you can argue if that's conscious or not, which is a whole...
I was going to say, we're digging very deep into philosophical concepts.
I don't think anybody would argue that a general animal is like not intelligent, right? A deer is going to run away from you in the woods if you're hunting it. That's intelligence. It's might not be the level of a human child or a human being, but it's definitely intelligent. You can argue about instincts.
Yeah, but I was going to say some humans might be dumber than the animal.
No, but instincts too, like that's a form of intelligence. Like maybe it's not a learnable intelligence that you have a set of characteristics that prevent you from dying or like seeking food and water, but like that's where a rock doesn't. Like you'd argue maybe a rock doesn't have the ability to move, but if it was intelligent, maybe it'd figure a way out. I don't know.
Yeah,
but so I get that part, but it's the people involved that need the accountability. I think most of the people who research this stuff and actually develop it are not out there claiming this stuff. I think they are claiming that it's an incredible technology and it has a lot of opportunity that we don't quite understand. Yeah. And I don't think the average person has been exposed to it in a way that makes it work well. I think a lot of what the average person does is probably not applicable or very helped by AI. So again, you can fix anything with software if you spend the time, energy, and money on it.
Yeah, right.
So I can have your toaster make you toast and a robot put bread in it and butter it up.
Just in time. Yeah, just come downstairs for breakfast.
Exactly.
Right.
If I want to spend millions and millions of dollars on it and have a set of parameters for you to follow to make the thing work. It's doable. It's maybe not the world's greatest experience, but we could do that.
Yeah.
And when it comes to AI taking my job, I hear there's a lot of fear. And I just read another report in the news where some big consulting firm is now saying that 50% of entry-level jobs will be taken by AI in a couple of years. Like nobody can predict the future ever. Never has been able to, never will be able to.
I mean, you could try to. You might get lucky, sure. Yeah.
So that's just wrong. So will it happen? Maybe. Will it happen in their timeline? Absolutely not.
I think there are a few points that people keep saying, and you may have heard that it's like an AI won't take my job, but someone who knows how to work with AI will, kind of thing. Yeah. Right? This idea that once you get familiarized with AI, you improve your efficiency to a point where you're a better candidate than someone else. So for the most part, I think that holds true. AI as a technology is a tool. And when people have access to tools, they tend to do things that make them better at doing other things for them. Right? So to an extent, AI can take your job if it's someone using the AI. There's also an element of there are people who are in the seats to make decisions who think of AI as job displacement. So they're replacing their people with AI. And in that case, yeah, of course, AI is going to take your job because you have a leader who is thinking to replace you with AI. But that shouldn't be the case. I don't think that is the right way to approach it either. I think it is a wake-up call to people to start thinking about how they do their work or how should they be working. Because of the natural progression of AI, it's going to be something that people are going to adopt, whether it's because someone heard it from someone else and they try it and they think it's great, or they just jump on the bandwagon. I think it's here to stay just by the nature of what it can do.
Yeah.
But it's not a concrete answer whether it will or won't. It's circumstantial. But for the most part, probably not directly. Probably.
I was going to say I have a really strong opinion on that.
So there is something like replacing early in the context of talent, and we talk about this too when you're building teams. Yeah. If your job is something that is pretty rote or coordinating between things, probably you can get replaced by AI. But if you think about the early labor, people talking about new people coming in being replaced by AI, I don't know that's necessarily true because in an organizational context, you're always thinking about your succession. So the talent that grows into your company and takes it forward. And if you replace your entire early entry workforce with AI, you're not going to have that leadership to take it forward when the time comes for you to pass the baton.
That's a huge, so I want to rebuke a lot of what you said, but I want to capture that.
Yeah.
I want to capture that point though of let's just assume that it will, and it's going to be all knowing or knowing enough to replace entry level workers. If that's the plan, then who takes over the company and who, Like humans have a finite life, and until we can download our consciousness into the robot, it's not going to change. And that is nowhere close to happening. So at the very minimum, you're still going to have to figure out a way to train new people for companies to continue to live on and move forward, even if it's going to take a large chunk of people's occupation. Mm-hmm. So and I want to be really clear, I don't think we're anywhere near that, with some asterisks and constraints, which we'll talk about. But to your point of if your job is very rote or very procedural and it's take this piece of paper and put it in this box, maybe not this probably should have just gotten this earlier, but AI is a colloquial for a lot of different types of technologies. And well, you said algorithm, right? That's software 101. If you can reliably determine variability, you can write an algorithm. Anyone who's done algebra, A plus 1 equals
geometric proofs.
X. Mm-hmm. So if A is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, X equals 2, that kind of stuff. That's really basic algorithm. When you start cutting into like heuristics, which is more of your like classical machine learning, start to have variability. If A equals 16, then do something else. So that same formula, now 16 plus 1 equals X, but X is not 17. X is like zebra, right? You're getting into calculus a little bit. And then having multiple levels of logic or determinism that's either predefined or as you're running a set of heuristics, trying to understand what the variability is and building up new heuristics based on that. So that's like kind of precursor neural nets, or depending on how you look at it, it's like unsupervised learning a little bit. So these are words that some people might know, some people might not know. Feel free to Google them. What are the elements of AI?
Machine learning processes.
Is something that is pretty well covered, and like there's a lot of stuff out there. And I've said enough keywords where you should be able to parse it together.
AI existed before 2013 or 2023.
Exactly. When you hear the tech CEOs of the world talk about AI, they're talking about this generative intelligence that just doesn't exist, that a lot of people think will at some point in the future. Mm-hmm. We're not there. But if your job is really rote and procedural, but you're also, I would argue that you are a candidate for automation. You are a candidate for software in general. AI doesn't change that calculus. Like the assembly line worker is a great example. 100 years ago, only humans were working on the movable assembly line. 50 years ago, a lot of robots or a lot of machines doing repetitive tasks were replacing people. Now, there might be one person on the assembly line and everything else is automated or there's robots running it, right? A lot of people say that took a lot of people's jobs and that's awful. Sure, but does a person really want to be twisting a bolt on a car 50,000 times a day for 20 years? Probably not. The societal problem then becomes this person has spent their time understanding this task. There's value, and I'm not trying to diminish that value. Maybe they don't have to learn. Maybe we just retire people, right? You've put in your 10 years, you're retired now, right? So how do you solve those problems, I think, is something we need to really move a conversation towards. But that's also applicable to just progress in general. So I'll give you that one. I don't think the AI is going to, it should be a drinking game every time I say the AI.
The AI.
I don't think it's going to take over. I do think modern like LLMs, transformers, neuros, all these kind of things provide new capabilities to software that didn't already exist. I think the AI will definitely enhance the capabilities of your rote job to be automated away from you. I don't know that anyone who's in a job function that will be removed by current or the next few years of AI, I would argue is probably not providing a ton of value.
Yeah.
You might just be there because someone wants the person.
Because they need it,
So things like meeting notes, things like agenda setting or action items, like AI is pretty good at that. If that was your job and that's the only thing you did, you probably don't have a job anymore. However, like a lot of people say, project management has so much more than those tasks. In a lot of places I've worked, those tasks tend to be forefront, but the orchestration, the following up with people, the horse trading to get stuff done, to reprioritize as other things in the world are changing, that's not going away anytime soon. It'll be enhanced again by AI. You'll be able to do that stuff, I think, faster and better. But the AI project manager is only going to take over the jobs of people who, I'm sorry, you're probably not providing a lot of value.
We're great project managers to begin with.
But that's your point where it's going to make you better. So the project managers who are using AI to take meeting notes, to help prioritize, to break down work, to synthesize information, they're going to be far above you if you're not using those technologies. So it is definitely a use it. It's taking some notes when you're talking to. So generally speaking, no, you're not going to be replaced because at the end of the day, these are stats machines. If all you're doing is synthesizing information and spitting it out, then you're probably not providing value. It's how you use that information. It's like consultants always come up. Consultant just comes in and listens and then provides a plan. A lot of them do. And a lot of them are not going to be around. Yeah. But a consultant who can come in with AI and throw in some documentation and synthesize large information, take their experience, take all of the other inputs that the AI doesn't know, right? Like a good example would be if the barrier for your team to work better is because everybody is in different parts of the office and it takes them 10 minutes to get to the meeting. And so they lose 10 minutes every time they go to a meeting, and every meeting is now 10 minutes away. So you're losing 2 hours a day because you're just walking around.
Too close to home, man.
I know. The AI is probably not going to have that. Could the AI determine that if it had the input? Absolutely. But it doesn't. And we're so far from that future where it just has all of this information. And people's brains are very good at taking in massive amounts of information, making sense of it, and having you pay attention to what matters the most. Is the thing going to kill me? Tends to be number one. And then it's like decision tree is, can I run from it or should I fight it? That's that typical fight or flight.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's, I like this, I want more of it. Or I don't like this, I want to avoid it. Or it's not scary and dangerous, so I want to investigate it. Ooh, it looks now scary. And so it's like our brains are really good at this, and we're really good at determining patterns, and we're really good at avoiding things. So AI can help with that. But I don't think your job is just going to go away. I do think... Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I have a question. It might pivot a little bit, but I stay in the sense that it eventually becomes an eventuality. like people are starting to see the value now, and whether they know exactly what to do with it or not, do they end up adopting it in, we're just talking about you can't predict the future, but 5 years time, is it going to be more commonplace, much more commonplace than we anticipate it to be as technologists?
I'm not going to make future statements on this podcast because I'm ragging against people who do. So
okay,
yeah, but your point, like,
don't be the hypocrite.
Right,
sure.
I'm a technologist. You're a technologist.
I'll give it to you.
We see the potentialities of technology and conjecture. There's nothing wrong with that. I have a problem when your company is trying to do that at a mass scale or claim, which I think is a really interesting kind of maybe next point, is that it's really easy to talk about things you don't have a lot of deep knowledge on.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the root of this AI problem is coming. These CEOs of companies, they might have some technology background, but they don't have deep knowledge in everything that they purport the AI is going to take over. Biology is a really great example, I think, of this, where anyone who knows a biologist, they'll tell you, we don't know anything about biology, really.
How does a human work?
And the further down the rabbit hole of biology you get, the harder it is. Like the immune system, like why do some people get sick and other people don't get sick? Why do some people die from the measles and some people don't? Why do some people constantly get the measles and some people have no symptoms? Like we have relative understanding of how this stuff works, but we don't have a clear enough understanding of how to trigger it or how to necessarily prevent it. Like things like vaccines are a tool that can help, but can you get too many vaccines? We really don't know because we don't know what that threshold is. Or why do some vaccines wane over time in some people and not others? Some people get a vaccine, they're good forever. Some people get a vaccine and their immunity decreases over time. Right. And that doesn't mean vaccines don't work. But I like to bring up vaccines a lot because they do work and there's a lot of misinformation about it. But there's a lot we don't know. And so to say the AI is going to solve that problem is complete nonsense because the AI is trained on methods. So it can understand the scientific method. It can understand all the literature and all the research about it. But it doesn't have the ability to execute on experimentation like an actual biologist does. So could a biologist use AI to understand information? It could read the entirety corpus of all human information on biology, sure. But it doesn't have the capability to establish known patterns because what you're doing in that field isn't known. That's research 101. So any area where you're doing novel information, I talk a lot about that on the podcast, AI is not really helpful for. It can help you understand things that you might not have thought about. I love the chain of reasoning in AI because it'll be asking itself questions and it'll be like, oh, I hadn't considered that. Or, oh, that's an interesting question. Maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not. And it's like a good brainstorming buddy, but it's never going to replace the generation
of an experiment or generation of a new hypothesis.
It's a tool. It's just like a microscope. A microscope's not going to finish the experiment for you, but it might be an integral part of understanding what you're trying to understand. And I think that is, to me, like the biggest key with this stuff is that these people purport an administrative assistant, secretary, whatever verbiage you want to use. Oh, they don't really provide value. And that's the person who greets your customers at the desk.
Yeah. Touch.
That's the first person. That's the first human being that people see when they enter your office. Do you really want that to be a robot? And if it is a robot, does that completely change everything that you do? Probably. Does it do it better?
To the fast food industry.
But does it do it better? Maybe. Does it not do it better? I don't know. Probably not. Is there value? Is there other value in that humans work? And maybe you really enjoy joking with them on Friday morning. Or there's all sorts of intangible, really hard to measure that we don't account for in these calculus. And I'm not saying you should be employed just because you're funny and like people like joking with you.
Because you fill the space.
Because AI sucks at humor. But it goes back to, again, you don't understand what that person does. Or they're the person who, when there's 2 phone calls coming in at the same time, they intuitively know to answer this number because that account is the most important for whatever reason. Does that mean they answer right all the time? No. Maybe they make mistakes, but AI is going to do the same thing. Generative AI is not perfect either.
Yep.
And it's really easy to fire the person and not the AI, which is the accountability thing is another huge thing that these people
you don't fire the AI, you try and fix it, right? You can't fix the person.
We've talked a lot about that. That's the baby human problem where it's like if there's a mom and a baby walking and an elderly person and the car has to hit
your car, your automated car has to hit the Philippa for the trolley problem, but modernized. Right?
And so the idea is like a human driver makes some determination and there's no right answer, right? You don't want to kill the old person. You don't want to kill the mom and baby. But someone in this impossible situation, and a lot of times this is how a lot of accidents happen, is you're trying to avoid something and then something else happens. And so who's liable? The driver is typically liable, but then you would go to court and then you would look at the evidence and the evidence would hopefully suggest that there was nothing you could do. And you just have to live with that. And maybe you get a little punishment or something, but maybe you don't. Whereas in AI, do you arrest the software engineer? Do you arrest the product manager? Do you arrest the driver? Do you arrest the owner? Is it the company? And there's some problems there that we haven't quite solved either.
Yeah, and it's difficult to know if we will be able to solve those because those have been discussions that we've been having for, I want to say decade or so. Yeah. But yeah, taking it back, making maybe a little bit more practical, the question I was trying to lead to with the idea of will AI become an eventuality? There are companies now adopting AI and people who are worried about their job security because of the adoption of AI. Yep. What can they do about it?
That's a good question. So the thing is, like, a lot of executives are pushing it. And there was a really good case study. I forget what company it was, but it was customer service. And they're like, we're going to replace all the human customer service people with AI because AI is better. A big company bought it. And then 6 months later, they hired a bunch of humans.
Yeah.
Because the AI, it turns out, provided a worse experience or people didn't like it or all sorts of different reasons. So if you're worried about your job being replaced by AI, I would say learn how to use it. Learn what it's good for. Learn what 100%. It's not. Because as your company or as your business or your team is evaluating this, you can help point at the faults of it. It's like, it's not good at these tasks. But you also want to say it is good at these tasks. Because there are tasks that are your job that it will be good for.
Yep.
I think that's the biggest thing is don't be afraid of it. Learn how to use it. Most of the chat programs are free. A lot of applications have AI built in. Just be cognizant that any information you put in there is probably
data.
used.
Yeah, data privacy is public. Yeah.
That's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't worry too much about it. Like the headlines are the headlines. A lot of layoffs or firings because of AI are just poor management. I've talked a lot about that as well. It's like your job as a manager is to make sure the company continues to go and you hit your goals and you make money. If you overhire a bunch of people and then fire them to fix that problem, you as a manager should also be fired because you made the wrong decision.
Yeah.
And holding people accountable for those and not just letting technology scapegoat it. Because you look at a lot of companies who are firing people for AI, they're hiring a lot of people in other capacities too. So it really isn't about AI replacing people as much as it is a nice convenient
changing the way you work.
But I do think there's a little bit of a coefficient where if you had a team of 100 people and everyone's using AI, maybe you only need 80 people. There's some sort of efficiency metric where you are able to do more with less and the AI is cheaper than paying humans to do that work, or the humans who do the work can do that much more. And so maybe people will get fired. Maybe you probably weren't providing value to begin with, or you were just really expensive.
Yeah.
But more likely, you probably won't hire as many people. And I think that's going to be the newer trend is that as companies are growing, I think Instagram had 18 employees. They probably had a bunch of other people who weren't like on the books when they got bought by Meta. You could conceivably probably make that same technology today if you got that level of adoption with 5, maybe 10 people tops.
Right. Yeah, we talked a little bit about AI first organizations.
Yeah, and part of that is the scale of technology has changed drastically, but also I talk about this all the time. I use AI to code all the time, and I don't need an engineer to do a lot of the work, and I can prototype most of what I need and then talk with people or really study the problem hard and come up with a solution versus trying to figure out how to get started or trying to figure out how to prototype. It's like, how do I refine it better and not how do I do it? Traditionally, that would have required a bunch of server people and a bunch of network people and a bunch of programmers to like do this. Now I don't need that. But at a certain point, I still need it. It's not the AI is not going to replace a team of people doing work either.
Not yet. No. But yeah, I could Yeah, I second that. I think people should learn how to work with the AI in this context, and you really learn by doing. And one other point I do want to make is this idea of people thinking that the AI can just do stuff and displace you.
Right.
It can't replace expertise, right? The things
Exactly.
that if we were to talk and I just had an LLM talk about AI stuff, I would not. Or if I had an LM summarize some of the stuff that we were to talk about today and then jump into this conversation, I would not be able to hold the conversation if I didn't do that research. But it's expertise that I built over time.
Exactly.
So think similarly when you're working with this stuff is it's not going to replace the many years of expertise if you've had that to overnight. So there's a unique value you have there, and think about how you can leverage that in conjunction with the AI as opposed to deferring to the AI, so to speak.
Yeah, and I would, and there has to be data and understanding to train it. There has to be a deterministic output to most extents in order for it to quote unquote learn something. So when it comes to creativity, are they creative? No, they're just remixing the training information that they're trained on in ways that you might not have conceived of before. That's not really creativity, because it will, if you are able to exhaust it enough, you will eventually not get new answers.
Yeah. Right? If anyone's ever played with some of those AI generated, I shouldn't say now because I haven't played with the new stuff, but in the earlier days, it was so hard to get something that you wanted by prompting it in natural language. So you're trying to create art, and then you're like, no, I wanted it this way. Redo the entire thing. No.
If I say, I think, therefore, complete the sentence, it'll say I am, because René Descartes, that's most people.
That's probably the most common,
are familiar with that. If I say red giraffe, purple pear, yellow submarine, what's next? It's going to come up with probably an infinite number of things because there is no known pattern there. I mean, I guess it's all objects. I'm sure it'll reason into some sort of chain at some point. But
that's what we call hallucination. Yeah.
Right. I just made that up. There is no predetermined pattern. Or if you recite the lyrics of the Star Spangled Banner or a Bible verse that everyone knows or something like that, like you're going to get those patterns. But it's because it's trained on it. It's because it's known. And so if it doesn't have patterns, it doesn't have the data. And that's, again, going back to like science or creativity or novel invention, is that it might help, but you lack the expertise. You lack the ability to create things out of patterns that are either hard to understand or unknown. And just try it, or something I say all the time to my teams, and we don't know. Let's just try to do it and see if it works or not, because we'll never really know. You can hypothesize, but
it's an unknown. Yeah, you got to discover what your unknowns
and
are
until
first.
AI has that ability, it's never going to be creative, and I don't know that it ever will. I think it's conceivable that it'll have all of the knowledge of humanity, but then at that point, humanity is probably not creating new knowledge, which means the AI will eventually become irrelevant because it won't work anymore. It's like pop culture problems. It's like the Soviet Union, when they were walled off from the world. People came out of the Soviet Union collapse in 1992 and they looked like it was 1970 because that was the last information they had, because it was all cut off from the rest of the world.
Oh, interesting. I thought North Korea would have been the first place you would jump for something
maybe.
Like that.
Yeah, they're still in the bubble.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's going to be an interesting thing. I really wanted to talk through dispelling some of this stuff because it's a very real tool. It has very real purposes, but you shouldn't be afraid of it. You should be using it. And that's the best way to hedge against, will AI take your job? And I would say, generally speaking, it'll probably take parts of your job, and that's okay.
Yeah. I will say, as an engineer, as a developer, I'm glad it's taking part of my job in doing some of the rote coding that I would normally have to do. So
if anything, easily verifiable, AI is a great tool. And that's a good use for AI. There's a couple interesting papers I read. I think I sent you one this morning where they're talking through AI doesn't tend to do context as well as we thought it did. It tends to look at the first part of something and the last part
it misses out. Yeah, it misses out the middle stuff. Yeah, right. For the most part, there's an emphasis by the nature of the way we train these models that there's a bias towards the beginning and the end of your context window.
Exactly, and that is oftentimes the most important context, especially in a novel pursuit of. It's like here's what I'm going to do. Okay, cool. Here's how I got there, the end, the conclusion. But if I want to...
Some of the important stuff is in the middle.
If I want to try to mimic it, or I want to try to do something better, I'm going to want to see what your approach was. I'm going to want to see
the process.
What parts you called out as not working, or what parts were working, or did you try this approach that I've been thinking? That's where the LLMs, like, it's great to give the synthesis, because I use it for summarization all the time, but it's also, I usually use it for things to summarize that are not super important or have no critical output that are probably good to know. And then a lot of times I'll be like, oh, that's interesting. And then I'll end up reading the original anyway. But what's been happening is, as people are using LLMs, they're not going back to the original. And that's a huge problem.
Yeah. I think that was related to one of the things you sent me earlier today as well. Yeah. It was this idea of sources in, like, when you have these summarizers, when you're using an LLM as search and they're summarizing the data they find, they do provide you the sources, but nobody clicks on them. Nobody goes to check. Yeah. And that might just be a nature of humans.
And then you have the hallucination problem. It might just be making this up and say, here's all my sources. Yeah. And if you don't check, you don't know.
Yeah, you don't. Exactly.
That's a very real problem that is really hard for companies to solve for. Yeah. And then there's the just, what did it miss problem? And this is why, like, legal scholars and stuff, I don't think it's ever going to replace lawyers, because law comes down to sometimes a word or an apostrophe.
Yeah, the nuance, the interpretation of a specific word.
Exactly. And so, I can help you get the gist of the brief. And a lot of times I'll summarize a big document if I'm going to read it, get the gist of what it thinks the key points are, and then read it. And it's mostly right, but there's always something in the document that I'll be like, oh, that's more interesting to me than I thought it would be, or that wasn't in the summary, or it just completely ignored this giant chunk of something because it didn't think it was important. But I either thought it was important to, like, the point of the document, or got me thinking about something that I could have never predicted, that I'm down another pathway of potential value.
Yeah. Like, I think that goes back to the point of the expertise. It's, if you don't go through the process of reading the original source yourself, you're never going to have that anchor.
Yeah, and I think it is going to be a big struggle for people who don't have the expertise. And how do we get that expertise again? And I think we've talked a little bit about, maybe we dive into that on another podcast, because I think that's back to, like, how to learn, how to explore the whole idea of creativity.
How to be curious. And
But I think maybe to leave folks with a little bit of positive on that, it comes back to the same way we've always done it. You can go to a school and get education. You can learn from other people in the field by watching. Even YouTube now is a great a way to learn stuff about things you don't know. But I think we bring back apprenticeships. We just hire people that we know are not capable and put them in an environment where they can learn the information or learn the skills through observation, synthesis, trial and error, and then build them up in a better way. Because I don't think going to school as a computer scientist and to go learn software engineering is the right path for most people in the age of coding assistants, especially in the next couple of years. I think these things are going to get so good that it's going to come down to a bulk of the minutia, the hard code writing, logic-y stuff will be solved for, but you're still going to need to implement the better algorithm. You're still going to need to figure out how to scale it. And that's skill sets that you're not going to really pick up in a college class or watching some YouTube videos. That's going to be here's how the company has designed the tech stack. Here's how we as a team work. And you're going to have to learn that. And you're going to be brought on as like an apprentice probably. And then, you're the apprentice. You're going to fill a lot of stuff up. That's fine. But we're going to give you the things that are okay to learn on, or that might not be as critical. And we have to go back to humans. And this is how stonemasons learned, right? This is how blacksmiths learned.
Trade schools.
Right?
Trades.
You learned you went and dug the iron out of the ground back in the day, and you learned that this kind of iron is better than that kind of iron, or processing this iron in this way produces better steel. Like Japanese sword making is a great...
Ooh, the lost art.
I know, right? It's an art, but it was all apprentice driven. Nobody was born knowing how to make a sword. And then all these techniques were developed that all got lost because that craft or that field of study went away for whatever reasons. And now we still don't know how they did some of this stuff or produce steel in a way that doesn't rust, but should. So I think that's probably the path forward. And let's talk about that next time. Apprenticeships and
We should. I have a lot of experience in this space because I didn't train as a computer scientist, but I do think that there are some interesting things that one needs to learn or should learn in the computer science domain, like the fundamentals, but also I was very closely involved with talent growth and talent acquisition in a previous role.
No, I agree.
And a lot about that.
Like getting into the field immediately and then going back to what we call like continuing education or like adult learning, where you go to college after you're outside of, I think the technical cutoff for adult learning is like after 24 or something like that.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
So I am very pro education. I'm very pro college. I think you need to be in an environment that enforces those styles of modality. But I also don't think that the pathway necessarily needs to be you graduate high school, you go into college, and then you go to get a job either. I think we need to rethink how we bring people into the workforce and how we bring people up to competency and not this like magic pattern that's existed for the last 30 or 40 years. Let's end it there.
That would be a fun conversation.
All right,
Looking
man.
forward to that. Yeah.
Take care.
Okay. You as well.
You can find us at 3reate.com. It's like the word create, but with a 3 instead of the C. As always, we encourage you to listen, watch, do. We'll see you next time. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/3reate or at ko-fi.com/3reate. Thanks for listening.